I'm new on this app, but I never expected my first Reddit experience to be me sharing a story that has damaged my life in so many ways. I had an affair with my husband's childhood friend, and now I'm facing the consequences of my actions. I got my karma, and it slaps harder than anything I can describe. I've always heard that karma is a bitch. Well, now I'm beginning to understand what that saying really meant. I decided to sow more than I could reap, and now I'm reaping a whole lot of miserable deeds. Cheating is one thing, but cheating with someone's close friend is another level of wrong. And here I am, in this position, with this disgusting shame I have brought upon myself. Temptation is something that not even the strongest of hearts can resist. It takes a lot of self-discipline to not give in to something that's literally right in front of you. I couldn't resist the temptation that was right in front of me, and that led me to committing a taboo that I regret with all my heart. My story is just not any normal story. It did not just happen overnight. I didn't just cheat overnight. It's something that was months or even years in the making. Before I go on, let me tell you all a little background story about me and my husband. My name is Christina, and I'm a 29-year-old makeup artist. I've been married to my husband, Andrew, a 31-year-old accountant, for over 3 years now. I met Andrew when his sister booked me for a makeup session. She came to New York to visit Andrew for some time before going on. Her birthday was in the same week, so she decided to book a makeup artist for her birthday shoot. I was recommended to her, and that's how I got the gig. Andrew was not in the house all day, but only got back when I was already done with the makeup. He greeted me casually before going upstairs. I was really shy when I saw him because Andrew is very attractive. Before I continue the story, let it be known that I also met Andrew's childhood friend when I came to do his sister's makeup. But that story is coming up ahead. I'm the type of woman that likes men who do not flaunt their interest for me openly. I like men that act like they are uninterested. Yes, Redditors, I know that sounds extremely weird, but it's true. That's the kind of person I am. That day, when I noticed how casual Andrew was when he greeted me, I took a liking to him. He looked extremely tired and went into his room immediately. His sister is quite a jovial person, and she was the one who told me how hard her brother works. She told me he gets back from work late sometimes and ends up tired. But on that particular day, Andrew got back home at 5 p.m., and that's when I was able to see him. I was already done with the makeup, and the photographer was already at the house so he could take the pictures. I did not have any business there again and was about to leave, but when I saw Andrew, I knew I was done for. Yes, I liked him the very first moment I saw him. I don't mean love at first sight, lol. It was more like a silly attraction that came at the spur of the moment. Even now that I think about it, I can't deny the fact that my husband is really attractive. I'm not surprised that I got attracted to him on the very first day I saw him. So, my fellow Redditors, that attraction led me into making a very stupid decision. I asked his sister if I could stay behind just to see how the pictures came out and to help her retouch the makeup when necessary. Yes, I was that desperate to get Andrew's attention. The surprising thing is that Andrew literally took forever to come out that day. The photographer was almost done with the pictures before I spotted Andrew coming out of the house. Imagine waiting hours just to see someone, and when they're finally there, standing right before you, your sense of reasoning disappears. I could not even walk towards him and start a conversation. It was his sister who took it upon herself to ask me if I fancied her brother. I tried to talk my way out of it, but eventually, I gave in and decided to tell her the truth. She was excited at the prospect of me liking him, but she was also a little bit sorry for me. When I asked her why she was sorry, she told me that Andrew already had a girlfriend and they were pretty serious. My fellow Redditors, I felt really heartbroken when she told me that. I know it sounds weird to be heartbroken when you have not even dated this person, but it wasn't easy. Have you ever had a crush who was dating someone else? It's a very horrible feeling. My main reason for feeling bad was that I'd wasted hours of work waiting for him so I could start a conversation, only to be told that he had a serious girlfriend. The makeup artist in me already calculated how much money I could have made during the time I spent daydreaming about someone I met barely hours before that time. Since I no longer had a reason to stay, I grabbed my makeup items and proceeded to leave the house. Andrew's sister did something that literally shook me in many ways. She called her brother at the lady minute and asked him to come see me off. Yes, she did that. I was so embarrassed that I tried to give her a hint that I was not interested in doing that. She did not listen to me at all. Andrew looked tired, but he still walked towards us with a smile on his face. He commented on my makeup skills and bid me farewell. Before he went back to the house, his sister made a comment about me having a crush on him. I swear, Redditors, I felt like letting the ground swallow me. At first, Andrew thought his sister was just being playful, but when he noticed my expressions, he realized she was telling the truth. Everything felt too awkward, and I did not want to be in that situation. So I quickly left and made my way back home. 3 months later, I got a text from Andrew's sister. Apparently, she was back in New York and needed another makeup tutorial. That's how I ended up meeting Andrew's childhood friend, Collins. When I was busy with Andrew's sister's makeup, Collins randomly came to the house. He was friends with Andrew's sister. Well, I'll call her by her name from now on. Her name is Linda. So Collins came over while I was busy with Linda's makeup. He was friendly and even offered to assist me with the brushes and makeup items I needed while I was doing the makeup. The three of us managed to chat during the course of the makeup, and I was glad that the work environment was conducive and fun. At some point during the makeup, Collins asked for my phone number. He insisted that he just wanted to find more clients for me. I didn't mind and gave my phone number to him. I already forgot about the crush I had on Andrew because I honestly did not feel like he was someone I was ever going to see again. It was only a coincidence that his sister randomly asked me to be her makeup artist again. Well, I was very wrong because I saw Andrew again. He came back from work to get something before going back. My fellow Redditors, I really felt like the universe wanted us to meet again. But unfortunately for me, Andrew was in a rush. He went back to work immediately. Linda asked me if I still had feelings for him, and I brushed it off. I was not ready to go to that party. To be honest, I felt like a high school girl who was having a fling with someone that didn't even know her. The fact that he had a girlfriend was a huge turnoff because I was not ready to be that girl that tried to steal someone else's boyfriend. Well, my fellow Redditors, I did end up being that girl at the end of the day. 2 days after doing Linda's makeup, I got a call from Collins. He asked us to meet up for coffee, and I agreed. Collins was a nice guy, but he was not the man whose attention I wanted to get. But I didn't mind having a harmless coffee with him. After 3 weeks of randomly meeting up for coffee, Collins told me he had feelings for me. Okay, for someone who wanted to get the attention of his childhood best friend, I was not really excited. Andrea was the one I liked. But unfortunately, he was in a relationship. Collins seemed nice and all, but I found it weird to date the best friend of a guy I had feelings for. It was never going to end well, so I lied to Collins and told him I was not ready to be in a serious relationship. Prior to my conversation with Collins, Linda already told me Collins was a flirt, and I shouldn't take him seriously. I did not believe her until Collins told me we could just hook up and have a fling. I was not up for it, so I told him so. I don't want this to get too long, so I'll try to just point out the main details. Linda found a job in New York and started living with Andrew temporarily till she was able to get her own place. Linda and I became friends, so she invited me to Collins' house often. Sometimes I'd practice new makeup trends on her face and we'd experiment it together. Linda and I became quite close, and it was a friendship I didn't see coming. I know you all are where Collins was during all this time. Collins was still in a relationship, and his girlfriend, Sandra, even came to the house many times. Yes, I know what you all are thinking. It did hurt me to see the guy I liked with his girlfriend, but there was nothing I could do. Months flew by, and Kinda told me Collins and Sandra took a break in their relationship. I don't really know the details of what happened, but I heard that Sandra had been transferred to work in another state. Collins was not ready for a long-distance relationship, so they decided to take a break and see how things went. Long story short, I decided to use that opportunity to get Andrew's attention. I know that sounds desperate and awkward, but I liked him a lot and wanted to date him. We started chatting once in a while anytime I visited Linda, and that's how our friendship started. But it was just a friendship. There was nothing more to it. But one day, Linda invited me to the house to help her pack because she already found an apartment to move into. I knew that would be my last excuse to see Andrew, so I decided to speak to him. I stayed overnight in their house because we packed till it was very late. Linda asked me to stay over so I could follow her to her new apartment. That night, I met Andrew in the living room and we started chatting randomly. He was quite sad that his sister was going to move out since he's gotten used to being around. The three of us drank a lot that night and watched movies. Linda decided to go to sleep early since she still had to move out. My fellow Redditors, that's how I was left in the living room with Andrew. I don't know if it was the alcohol we took or the romantic movies we watched, but we ended up sleeping together that night. When I woke up the next morning, I was afraid he'd regret everything and possibly tell me it was a mistake, but that wasn't the case. Oh my God, this got longer than I expected, Redditors. The main story is not even here yet. I just wanted you all to understand the dynamic that started between Collins, Andre, and I. Talking about Collins, if you're wondering where he was during all these, I'll tell you. A few months before Linda moved out, Collins lost his father and went back to his hometown. He told us it was really tough on his family since his mother was also dead. He had 4 siblings to take care of, so he decided to stay in his hometown for a while to monitor them and be the father figure. Andrew and I started dating weeks after our intimate moment in his house. A part of me was really scared he'd get back with his girlfriend, but I decided to finally ask him if they were ever going to get back together. He told me he was not getting back with Sandra because he was not ready for a long-distance relationship. Linda was really happy I was dating Andrew because she believed I genuinely liked him a lot. The relationship between Andrew and Collins was still quite strong despite the distance. Andrew and Collins called each other almost every week, and Collins even tried his best to send Andrew money to support him sometimes. Collins and I lost contact during that period, and it was mostly my fault. I blocked him even before he went to his father's burial because I did not want to complicate things. He'd approached me many times and I always said no. I did not want to keep hurting him, so I decided to cut all communication with him. Collins was not aware that Andrew and I were in a relationship at all. Maybe Andrew did not feel the need to tell him since he was not aware of Collins' feelings for me. Andrea was never really home when Collins used to flirt with me, so he was oblivious to our dynamic. I also took Linda's words seriously and did not take Collins seriously because I believed he was just a flirt. Andrew and I dated for 2 more years before he proposed to me. I said yes instantly, and that's how we got married. I'm going to say this with all my heart. I love my husband very much. My fellow Redditors, I love Andrew with all my heart. Even from the first day I saw him, I knew that I had strong feelings for that man. Getting married to him was the happiest moment of my whole life. Even my family believed that there was no better match for me. His family was very welcoming and they made me feel at home. A few weeks before the wedding, Andrew told Collins he was getting married to the girl he's been dating for over 3 years. Collins knew Andrew was in a relationship, but he did not know it was me. Maybe Andrew did not mention my name, or maybe Collins just decided not to think about it. I don't know which one it is, because when Collins came back to New York for the wedding 2 weeks early, he was shocked to see that I was the one getting married to Andrew. Collins pulled me to the side and poured out his heart. He accused me of trying to use his childhood best friend to make him jealous. Yes, he said that. I had to make it clear to Collins that I'd always liked Andrew from the very first day I saw him. I had to make him understand that even if Andrew was not his best friend, I'd still have dated him. Collins did not seem to get my explanation at all. He looked like he could snap my neck in half. My fellow Redditors, that really made me scared. I did not want Collins to end up ruining my relationship with Andrew, so I decided to go tell Linda what had transpired. She called Collins and explained everything to him. She even explained how I'd told her I had a crush on Andrew since the very first day I saw him. Collins finally decided to let it go and told us he was just overacting. I didn't want to count in his words, so I told Andrew everything. Andrew seemed upset at first because of Collins' behavior, but they had a bro talk about it and everything was cleared. Collins assured Andrew that he was just joking and wanted to make me sweat just for fun. We laughed it off and moved on. We had a stress-free marriage 2 weeks later. When I moved into Andrew's house after the wedding, our life as a married couple began. It was really a nice experience, and it felt good to call someone your husband confidently. It felt good to own the right to somebody as much as they owned rights to you. I fell in love with the way he treated me and the way our marriage had mutual respect for each other. I continued my job as a makeup artist, and I was really busy. Andrew was also busy with work, but we'd find time once in a while to go on dates and go on trips. Everything was literally perfect, and I did not think that there'd ever be a reason for me to come to Reddit and write about how my marriage has taken a drastic turn because of me. Yes, me. There's no one more responsible than me. Sure, other people played a part in it, but the ball was always in my court. I'm the one who really had the final say to decide if I wanted to fall for the temptation that brought itself. I got carried away, and now I've broken everything Andrew and I worked hard to build. I cheated. I cheated on my husband. I never thought I'd ever cheat on him. I never thought things would get to this point, and now I regret everything that let get in the way of me and my husband. If you're guessing that Collins had a hand in it, you're right. I bet you never guessed that Sandra, his ex-girlfriend, would have a hand in it too, right? Well, Sandra is also very much involved in this whole fiasco. As much as everyone has a hand in it, I'm the one to blame. Does Andrew have a hand in it? I don't really know. But he's not entirely innocent. One day I got the shock of my life when Linda invited me to her apartment urgently. Many times before then, Linda had always invited me to come to her apartment for one or two things. Our friendship was still the same, and we never let anything water it down. So, on this fateful day, Linda said I had to come urgently. Andrew was at work, so I dressed up and went to her place. Linda was practically pacing around the room when I came. I was really surprised to see her acting that way, so I asked her what the problem was. My fellow Redditors Linda told me that an unexpected guest was back in New York. That unexpected guest is Sandra. In any normal relationship, your husband's ex-girlfriend shouldn't bother you that much. But in my case, it bothered me a lot. The fact that Sandra and Andrew were in a very serious relationship and only broke up because of work was enough reason to make me worried. They didn't break up because they fell out of love or anything like that. They broke up because they couldn't manage to have a long-distance relationship. I was very scared. I was terrified of the prospect of Sandra trying to get back together with him. There was every possibility that she would try to make things work, and I knew it. I knew that if she wanted him, the fact that he was married was not going to stop her. Linda tried to calm me down, but I was too far gone in my head to think straight. I honestly thought that my marriage was over, but Linda made me understand that I was overacting. She told me not to think too much about it, and that the only reason she felt like letting me know was so I would not overreact when I found out later. We all know some things are easier said than done, and in my situation, it was the same thing. I had a lot that was at stake, so I decided to go back and get myself together. That day, I really found it hard to sleep. I really wanted to know if Andrew was aware that Sandra was back in New York. My fellow Redditors, you had to see how uneasy I was that night. It was so bad that even Andrew noticed that I was not my usual self. He asked me if everything was fine, and I told him I just had something on my mind, and it was not a big deal. Andrew did not buy my excuse. He was so tired from a hectic workday, but he insisted I told him what was bothering me before I went to bed. When I finally told him Sandra was back in New York, he was not surprised. Yes, Redditors, Andrew seemed to have been aware of Sandra's arrival. If I was worried before, the knowledge of that just made me more worried. I asked him how he knew, and he told me she reached out to him recently and asked them to meet for coffee. Listen to me, guys. I don't know if I might come across as paranoid or a drama queen, but I did not like what he said at all. Any woman would be angry if she found out her husband's ex-girlfriend asked him to meet her for coffee. But in my situation, I was paranoid. I knew their history, and I was aware of the fact that they never really had real relationship problems. I'm not one to bottle things in, so I told my husband right there, and then that I didn't want him to go meet Sandra. He asked why, and I told him everything I had in my mind. We never really kept secrets from each other before, so I felt comfortable telling him I was not happy about Sandra's arrival. Like all men in that situation act, he sweet-talked me into believing that there was nothing going on between him and Sandra. He told me she was still his friend, and all he wanted to do was marry her and catch up. There was nothing I could say again because I didn't want to come across as the overprotective wife. He had a point. He knew her even before he met me, and there were still friends. I made him promise me that he'd be back in less than an hour, and he did. I'll be lying if I said I was not still worried. Well, they had coffee 1 week later, and we moved on with our lives. But I still had a feeling that Sandra was trying to reach out to Andrew. I knew this because of the sudden calls Andrew was getting frequently. He'd silence his phone or cut the call, but I knew there had to be something fishy going on. I managed to lie with that suspicious feeling for 3 more months before something unexpected happened. Collins came back to New York with his siblings. He'd earned enough money in his hometown for all those years, so he decided to come back to New York with 2 of his siblings. The rest were either in college or working. I did not expect Collins to return at all. It honestly came as a shock to me. At that point, I kind of felt like all the problems in my past were returning. Of course, I never had a relationship with Collins. We were just friends, and he asked me out, but I refused. We'd moved past that, and he even attended my wedding. There was nothing to worry about, but I didn't like everything that was happening at all. I already hated the fact that Sandra was trying to reach out to my husband. I was certain of this because I saw her missed calls on his phone. From the things I saw, it seemed like Andrew had been ignoring all her advances, but she was still trying. I knew that it was only a matter of time before he gave in or she got crazier. I spoke to Linda about my concerns and she assured me that Andrew was never going to cheat on me. I believed her, and so I tried to calm down. Collins became a thorn in my flesh all of a sudden. He was my husband's best friend. Childhood friend for that matter, so it made sense that he started visiting our house frequently. First, he brought his siblings along and tried to tell us how he was being a wonderful father figure. Andrew and Collins had a very strong friendship, so Andrew did not seem to mind Collins' regular visits. I'm sure you all have read about those ladies that are accused of coming in between their husband's relationship with his friends and relatives. I didn't want to be that wife, and I didn't want to be accused of doing something like that. That's why I tried my honest best not to let Andrew know that I was uncomfortable with Collins' visits. I did not want to suddenly tell my husband that I didn't want his best friend at our house anymore. Collins took my silence for approval. He started coming more frequently and eating around the house. Yes, he practically took anything he wanted from the refrigerator without asking me. Sure, he didn't need to. I'm just his friend's wife. I'm sure he did all those things just to get on my nerves and make me do something that will cause a rift between my husband and I. All I wanted to do was handle everything in an amicable manner. I tried to be mature and reasonable in everything I did. One day, I decided to have a conversation with my husband. I told him everything Collins was up to, and I told him I didn't like his behavior at all. My husband gave me permission to speak to him and sort things out. He told me he didn't want to be involved in our disagreements. To be honest, I was really upset that my husband said that to me. He also said he didn't want to pick a side. Who the fuck was talking about picking sides? My fellow Redditors, all I wanted him to do was tell his friend to limit the way he came to the house and acted all high and mighty. But it seemed like I was asking him to do too much, so I took matters into my own hands. I had an argument with Andrew over the issue, but I decided to let it go because I knew that was Colin's plan all along. It was just a pity that my husband wasn't ready to see that his childhood best friend was trying his very best to ruin his marriage. One day I decided to speak to Collins. I told him I disliked the way he came to the house frequently and messed with the things in the kitchen without my permission. Collins actually got very angry and left the house. That was not my intention, so I told my husband what happened and asked him to call Collins on my behalf. Collins' phone number was STI blocked on my phone, and I did not plan on unblocking him. After Andrew got off the phone with Collins, he got angry and told me not to make Collins feel unwelcome in our home anymore. Apparently, Collins made up stories about me to Andrew. I tried explaining myself, but Andrew just told me not to bring up the subject. My fellow Redditors, I was very angry. It felt like my husband was only ready to take Collins' side, so I decided to stop caring about Collins' presence. I let him go whatever he wanted. After all, the real owner of the house did not mind. I did not speak to Linda about what was going on because I was already tired of disturbing her after every little misunderstanding between my husband and I. I wanted to handle things independently without disturbing her. At that point, I'd already forgotten all about Sandra and her presence in New York. I didn't even think about her or the fact that she was still trying to contact Andrew. But one day, I just couldn't understand what transpired. That was the same day I cheated on my husband with Collins. I still regret every single thing that transpired that day, but all I can do now is wallow in self-pity. It was a rainy day. It had rained from the previous night, non-stop. Andrew only managed to get to work safely when the rain stopped for some time. After he left for work, Collins showed up suddenly. Apparently, he forgot his work file at our place. Yes, that's how frequent he showed up. He was almost like a tenant at our place. After getting the work file, he asked if he could stay for brunch. Of course, I knew that was just his way of trapping me. If I refused, he'd make up stories to tell Andrew. I served him brunch, and while he was eating, it started raining again. It was another heavy rain, and it didn't look like it planned to stop. Collins could not go because it was not good weather to drive in. I was really worried about the possibility of Collins not making it home early that day because the rain was really heavy. I didn't want him to stay out late. I was worried for his safety, and I was also worried that Sandra might try something suspicious. A part of me felt like I was exaggerating, but I had to be certain. So, my fellow Redditors, I called my husband when it was almost 5 p.m. and he told me it was impossible to drive in the weather. He said he'd come home late. I got really worried because even Collins couldn't leave. I decided to calm my nerves and just go to my room. I took a hot bath before changing into my pajamas. I was hungry, and I also knew that Collins was hungry too. I did not cook anything in the afternoon and just munched on snacks. I did not expect him to stay for that long. After making dinner and offering it to him, I stayed in the living room to watch a movie. I wanted to be around when my husband came back, and I didn't want to fall asleep before he came. I was also not comfortable with living with Collins in the house with my husband while I was in my room. I did not trust him not to go looking into our things. Collins also stayed in the living room and watched the movie with me. It was quiet at first, and we did not attempt to start any conversation. But after some time, Collins started asking me about my makeup business. That's where the conversion began, my fellow Redditors. We spoke about life and random things. After some minutes into the second movie, Collins came to sit beside me on the couch. Our shoulders were practically touching. I was not uncomfortable in that position, so I moved away and sat on another couch. He laughed at my reaction and sat next to me again. Collins gave me no space to think. He told me I looked beautiful and that he still misses me. He started whispering non-coherent words, and I honestly felt like he was drunk. But then again, I did not see him drinking. I pushed him away and warned him to stop, or else I'd call my husband and tell him everything. I did not expect Collins to laugh in my face when I mentioned calling my husband. He called me a fool and told me I was dumb to think that Collins had been faithful to me. I called his rants bullshit and tried moving upstairs. I knew his words were getting to me and I didn't want him to brainwash me. But, fellow Redditors, I ended up being brainwashed. Collins asked me if I was aware that Sandra was back in New York. That caught my attention, and in a bid to show him Andrew and I didn't hide anything from each other, I told him I was aware. He took out his phone and showed me pictures of Sandra standing in front of Andrew's workplace. According to Collins, Sandra had been trying to reach out to Andrew. He told me she still wanted him back, and she'd showed up to his workplace many times. I might not have wanted to believe Collins, but pictures didn't lie, and the evidence was right in front of me. Collins also told me that Sandra was at Andrew's workplace that moment, and they were probably together getting intimate. I was shocked, but I refused to believe it, and brought out my phone to call Andrew. Andrew did not pick up after 2 more calls. Collins laughed again and told me he was telling me the truth. He even showed me a picture of Andrew and Sandra meeting up for lunch. I got brainwashed and I was stupid enough to believe everything he said. I started crying uncontrollably because I thought Andrew was cheating on me. Collins decided to comfort me by hugging me. That's how he started touching me, and I foolishly got carried away. I thought I was cheating back and paying Andrew back for lying to me. I ended up sleeping with Collins and we fell asleep on the couch. I woke up that same night to a bucket of cold water being poured on me. My fellow Redditors, my husband stood there and watched me with disgust in his eyes. The rain had stopped and he came home only to see me naked on the couch with his best friend. At first I felt guilty, and then I accused him of cheating first. I told him everything Collins told me. My fellow Redditors, my husband slapped me so hard that I fell on the floor. He almost killed Collins right there in the living room. Apparently Collins lied to me. All the pictures he showed me of Sandra standing in front of Andrew's office were true, but Andrew never met up with her intentionally. The picture of both of them having lunch was taken before I met him. I was so paranoid and brainwashed that I was not ready to see the real truth. After giving Collins several sounds, Andrew threw him out of the house. The words Andrew said that night still hurt me till this day. He was angry, disappointed, and enraged. He sent me out of the house in the middle of the night with only my pajamas. I had nowhere to go. I went to Linda's place that same night, even though she was terrified to see me in my horrible state. After telling her everything, Linda was furious. She told me she was disappointed in me for not listening to her warnings. She couldn't even look at me. She only allowed me to stay at her place for 2 days before sending me out. According to her, she could not go against her brother for me. Only my parents took me in, even though they still look at me with disappointment in their eyes. I lived miserably for 2 months. I tried reaching out to Andrew and visiting him, but he warned the gatekeeper never to let me in, and he blocked my number. Just last month, I heard from my friend that Andrew and Sandra are now back together. I almost ended my life when I heard the news. I've lost everything and I'm the only one to blame. Not even Linda wants to listen to me. Andrew sent me the divorce papers 2 weeks ago and I'm still yet to sign it. I plan on signing it soon because all hope is lost. I no longer have a marriage and I've lost my good friend. I betrayed my husband by sleeping with his childhood friend. Even though I was made to believe he cheated, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and I should have never cheated back as a way of revenge. At the end of the day, he didn't really cheat. It was all a trap. Maybe I was meant to learn my lesson the hard way. I'm to blame for everything. I regret cheating in my husband. I ruined everything with my own hands. Thank you for reading my story, Reddit. At least I got a little bit of closure. Till next time. Hopefully I have something to celebrate. Though, I highly doubt it. Good day, Redditors. I'm actually very excited to share my experience with you all today. Consequently, I know there will be several questions regarding the motive of this post, and I'm ready to answer all the questions. I'm in a very good mood because something very comical happened to me. Something that I'll like my dear Redditors to know. My ex-wife had the audacity to show up at my house yesterday. I thought she'd gotten lost or something, but no. She came intentionally. The funniest part is that the foolish woman wants me back in her life. She finally wants her husband and child back. I can assure you all that nothing like that is going to happen. I'd rather die than have that woman in my life again. After she came back here yesterday, I knew I had to hatch up a plan. I don't want her in my life or my child's life, and I will make sure I fight her till I die. But I don't know of my daughter. She might say she doesn't want her back, but we all know that children are gullible. It does not help that she was an infant and had no recollection of what transpired years ago. That's why I'm here to share my story with Reddit so you all can direct me to the right part. My motive is to make sure my daughter hates her forever, and I'm going to fight for that with everything in me. But before we do that, let me tell you all a little bit about me and my witchy ex-wife. My ex-wife, Sophia, F33, and I, Nathaniel, M35, were married for just 2 years and a half and knew each other for 2 years before we got married. We had our daughter 2 years into our marriage. We were first-time parents and knew nothing about raising a child, but we were ready to make an effort. Or so I thought. Barely 3 months after my daughter was born, my wife packed her belongings and told me she could no longer stay married to me. I'm done, Nathaniel. This isn't working for me. This is not who I am. Those were the exact words she said to me 10 years ago. How could a married woman with an infant just wake up one day and say she was done? How is that even supposed to make sense? I tried asking her what her reasons were, and all she could come up with was the fact that she was tired of raising a baby when she felt like a baby herself. For reference sake, I'll mention this again. Sophia was 23 years old by that time, and according to her, she was just a baby. Sophia said she was overwhelmed with our marriage and having a baby only made it worse for her, so she took her bags and left the house. Fuck it. I had a rough life even before I got married to Sophia. I practically had the worst childhood ever and was a victim of domestic violence. I grew up the hard way, so I built up my walls around me and was never one to care about any emotional shit. But what Sophia did that day got an emotion out of me. Anger. That's the emotion Sophia's actions got out of me, and trust me, that's a big deal. If Sophia had just left the marriage before we had our daughter, Daniela, I'd have been fine. I wouldn't even give a fuck what she ended up doing with her life. But she chose to abandon a little child who did nothing wrong. The moment Sophia left the house that day, I swore that she was dead to me. She has been dead to me for the past 10 years, and I swear on my life that she will be dead to me forever. Nothing in this world will ever make me take that woman back in my life. I'm not that stupid, and honestly, I don't even give a fuck what happens to her. I don't care why she came back, and I honestly don't want to know. When she came back yesterday with her mother pleading and wailing like a dog, I did not even look at her twice. I asked security to take both her and her mother out of my house. If Sophia and I didn't have our daughter, there would have been no reason for this post. But we have a daughter. My daughter is just 10 years old. Daniela is still in her first year of high school, and I don't want to take any chances. Daniela was just an infant when Sophia left her. She does not remember any of it, so it'll be hard for her to stay away. Almost every single day I remind Daniela how Sophia left her when she was just a little baby. Many people tell me I'm wrong for doing that, and it's not right, but I don't care. I did not care back then, and I don't care now. Some relatives say it's not good to ruin the relationship between the child and the mother. But as far as I am concerned, the only mother figure in my daughter's life is my girlfriend, Esther. Sophia is just a stupid mistake I made in my life, and I don't plan on repeating that mistake ever again. I want to ask you all, my dear Redditors, to give me tips on how to make my innocent high school daughter despise Sophia even more. I need to make sure there are no chances of Sophia crawling back into her life. I know that Sophia doesn't have a conscience, so why should I? To be specific, my dear Redditors, I plan on damaging their relationship beyond repair. A woman who can abandon an infant can do anything again in the future. I want to protect my daughter because I know she doesn't have a mind of her own yet. As for me, this is also important because I don't want to see Sophia near my house in this lifetime and many lifetimes to come. The only way to do that is to cut all ties with her. The only tie remaining is my daughter. I want to teach her a lesson, and that lesson is that you don't just leave and come only when it is convenient for you. Help me here, Redditors, it's urgent. Updating. Thank you to all my fellow Redditors who have been helping me out for the past 2 weeks. Yes, you all have been helping me out because your comments and ideas have gone a very long way. To be honest, I already have a ruthless plan to get Sophia out of my child's life, but for the sake of morals, I'll just let that one slide. I want to do this in a way that will only ruin Sophia's relationship with Daniela. I don't want anything to get in the way of my relationship with my daughter. We have been together for 10 years, and I don't see any reason why that should change. A lot of you advise me to take actions fast as there is a possibility of Sophia going to court. Yes, I know that's a big possibility, and that's why I practically ran to Reddit. I know I'll win the case hands down. I'm ready to spend all my money on it if it means I'll damage Sophia beyond repair, but a custody battle will only make my daughter's life complicated. I'm ready to fight dirty with Sophia as long as my daughter doesn't have to know about any of it. She's the only reason I haven't taken reflex steps yet. Every day for the past 2 weeks have made me more angry than ever. The level of hatred and disgust I feel for Sophia cannot be quantified. I hate that woman with every vein in me, and I wish her the worst every day of my life. What makes me even more angry is the fact that she had the audacity to come to my house after 10 years. Sophia disappeared for 1 decade, then came back like she is a fucking magician who did a trick and disappeared. Her stupid mother even had the audacity to follow her here. The same woman that came back 1 day after Sophia left just so she could finish packing what her daughter forgot. If not for the possibility of legal charges, I wanted to strangle that woman that day. But no, violence is never the answer, so I have to do this calmly. My definition of calmly is also going to be heartless because I have waited for an opportunity to show Sophia what it's like to just wake up and lose it all. Okay, let me catch up with all of you and get you on board with all that's been happening. After posting on Reddit 2 weeks ago, I decided to take my daughter out to get ice cream the next day. Of course, I had an ulterior motive behind doing that. I don't let her take ice cream more than 4 times. I'm a month and she already exhausted those chances, but I decided to take her out for ice cream, so I called to tell her a story. While we were at the park, I explained to her that her mother practically abandoned her when she was a child. Listen guys, I've told her that story many times, but that day, I had to make sure I left no stone unturned. Some might call it emotional blackmail, but I do not care. I have protected Daniela for 10 long years. I watched her come home from school and say kids were asking her why she did not have a mother to drop her off. It was hard for her to grow up with only nannies as the mother figures in her life. Most of my family members are countries away from us. Daniela assured me that she will never take Sophia back into her life. Honestly, I was not ready to take the word of a 10-year-old seriously, lol. My daughter is extremely innocent and kind. I'm sure all Sophia needs to do is fall on her feet, and then Daniela will take her back with open arms. I am here to make sure that never happens. My only mission here is not just to make my daughter hate Sophia. I also want to make Sophia regret everything she did 10 years ago. I want her to possibly tear up for the rest of her life. I know. That's heartless. Do I care? No. To my surprise, some days after taking Daniela to the park, I encountered Sophia at a restaurant. Thankfully, Daniela was at school and I was alone at the restaurant. Sophia had the nerve to walk up to me and tell me we needed to speak. I ignored her and ordered what I wanted to order. Sophia did not relent. She stood with me all through my order and dared to sit on the table I was seated on. Of course, she knew what she was doing. We were in a restaurant and we had people all around us. Of course, I could not start lashing out on her and I could not try to do anything to her. If not for the fact that I was a regular at that restaurant, I would have embarrassed the hell out of Sophia. Well, I did end up embarrassing her at the end of the day. Esther lived near the restaurant, so I called her and asked her to come there so we could have lunch. I know some of you might accuse me of trying to make Sophia jealous. Well, I don't know what my motive was exactly. One thing I know for sure is that I wanted to embarrass her and make her feel small. Whether she felt jealous or not is none of my business. In fact, that would be a plus for me. My girlfriend Esther is actually very possessive. I like that about her, and that day, at the restaurant, I loved her possessive side even more. I already told Esther about Sophia's return days before that day, and Esther was very pissed off. She even asked me several times if I still had any feelings for Sophia. Of course, I assured her that I didn't, but we all know how women are. Esther did not take my word for it, and to be honest, I liked that. When Esther arrived at the restaurant that day and saw Sophia sitting at my table, she practically sprinted to sit beside me. Esther did not only glare at Sophia, but she went as far as asking her if she had no shame at all. She asked Sophia why she was sitting at the table of her boyfriend when she was clearly not invited. Sophia was shocked to hear that I had a girlfriend. I find that very funny right now that I think about it. I mean, did she expect me to spend the rest of my life waiting for her to return before I moved on, or what? At first, I just sat back and watched how Sophia was struggling to defend herself, but when I had enough, I asked her to get out. She was taken aback and did not make any move to get up, but I stood up, cussed at her, then made a huge scene. When I say I made a huge scene, I mean I made sure the drama attracted security. I told then Sophia was intruding and disturbing my girlfriend and I. Esther seconded to my claims, so Sophia was escorted out of the restaurant immediately. We had caused a scene and people practically abandoned their foods to stare at us. I did not care because all I wanted to do was embarrass Sophia, and it was a very successful execution. Esther and I finished our lunch that day before leaving the restaurant. I got home late in the evening because I spent the day with Esther. It was summer break, so my mother picked Daniela up earlier that day and they went on a trip together. I was alone at home that night, but I did not expect any guest. It was almost 10 p.m. when my doorbell rang. It was raining heavily that night, and I did not expect anyone to come knock at my door. When I opened the door, I found the security man standing there. When I asked him what he wanted, he told me that someone was looking for me. I did not expect anyone late in the night, so I asked him if he recognized who it was. He told that it was the same woman who came to the house some days ago. I did not need a seer to tell me he was talking about Sophia. I was so angry that she had the nerve to show up at my house, again. I told the security man to tell her I was coming outside and that she should wait for me. The security man assured me he'll deliver my message. After he left, I locked my door, took a shower, and went to bed. Whether or not Sophia waited for me all night and got drenched in the rain, I didn't really care. I wanted her to know what waiting for someone felt like. When I woke up the next morning, I felt so happy to have left her outside, even after promising her that I'd come outside to see her. It was intentional, and I'll do it again if I have the chance. I don't think anyone would truly understand the amount of disgust I feel for that woman. Her presence practically makes me angry and uneasy. I mean, how could anyone sane enough to be called a human being just wake up one morning and leave everything behind? Everything, including a 3-month-old child. Anyone who is capable of doing that is not a human being but a beast, and I am not going to be hesitant when it comes to treating her like one. When she left 10 years ago, she practically vacated the city. I did not try looking for her, but my mother tried her best to find her. I couldn't care less, mostly because I treated betrayal with hatred. I don't have the time to dwell on the past. The only part of what Sophia did that got to me was leaving Daniela behind. That was it for me. But my mother did not relent. She kept looking for Sophia all over the city. After months of searching, she found out that Sophia had left the city with her mother. Some people said she eloped with a lover. Others said she just vacated the city. I don't know what really happened because, like I said, she's been dead to me for 10 years. I spent those years taking care of my daughter instead of looking for an adult that chose to make her own decisions. So guys, let me tell you what happened 2 days after I left Sophia in the rain. She practically stormed into my house with her mother and brother. I don't know how they even got past the security man at the gate. Sophia rained curses on me and told me how heartless I was for leaving her in the rain. She got teary-eyed and practically collapsed on the floor. She cried her eyes out and said I was making things difficult for her. All I want is my family. I want my family back, Nathaniel. Stop making this hard for me. Those were the words that came out of her mouth that day. I'm making your life hard? Are you sure you are mentally stable? When you left your daughter 10 years ago, how hard do you think her life was? How hard do you think her childhood was? And you stand here to tell me your life is hard. I pray it gets harder than this. My dear Redditors, that was my reply to her stupid claims. I had to make sure she understood the gravity of every decision she made. You know the funny thing? Sophia had the audacity to play that victim game. You know what they do in all those movies, right? One parent abandons the child, then comes back years later only to say, I'm here now. I was not in her life, but I am ready to make things right. Sophia decided to say those things too. I don't know if she thought I'd get moved by her display and suddenly tell her how much I missed her. Maybe that's what she thought, but that's definitely not what I did. In fact, I enjoyed seeing her rolling on the floor like a fucking mad bitch. I enjoyed each and every moment of it. I practically had a blast, and I am not even joking. After her stupid performance, it was her brother's turn to speak J-Guns. He told me Sophia was sorry and all she wanted to do was come back to her family. He said I should be a man and forgive her for everything she did and that it was all a mistake and blah, blah, blah. My dear Redditors, do you see what I'm working with here? I'm practically working with animals. They speak like people who have been out of touch with reality for years. To be honest, I feel like they have been out of touch with reality their whole lives. That's truly the only explanation in my head that makes sense right now. Because I don't understand how a grown man would stand in front of me and ask me to be a man by forgiving his sister who packed her things and left her marriage, a marriage that produced a beautiful daughter. I had to ask him where he was for the past 10 years and why he was not man enough to ask his sister why she abandoned a little child that knew nothing about the world. He stood there like the dumb fool he was and could not even look me in the eyes. I also had to ask him why he did not come to see his niece for the past 10 years. He tried defending himself, but I got so angry that I landed a punch in his face. I could resist putting my hands on a woman, but there's nothing stopping me from laying my hands on a dumb man. Yes, Redditors, I got into a fist fight with Sophia's brother. Of course, he fought back. He'd be a fool to not fight back. We fought for minutes, and it had to be the most satisfying minute of my life. It was satisfying because it just felt good to transfer all the hate and anger I had for my ex-wife to her brother. I think that's what they call transfer of aggression, right? Well, I think it was worth it. Sophia and her mother practically screamed on top of their lungs, thinking that would be enough to stop us from fighting. Well, it wasn't. The only people that ended the fight were my security guard and one of my neighbors who heard the conflict that was going on. Sophia left with her mother and brother immediately after the fight ended. It was satisfying to watch the horror on her face before she left. I knew that was the sign she needed to know that there was no chance that we were getting back together. After they left that day, I took a long shower and had a cold glass of whiskey. All the anger I felt did not suddenly vanish, but I still felt very relieved. Though I've not seen Sophia for the past few days, I still feel like she's not going to give up yet. I know that what transpired last time is enough to let her know that I am done with her forever, but I'm not sure it's enough to make her leave Daniela alone. Daniela is still with my mother, and I honestly don't want her to come back till further notice. I miss my daughter, but I'm doing this for her own good. I do not want Sophia anywhere near Daniela, and I put plans in place to make sure Daniela and Sophia never meet. I cannot control what happens in the future, but I can control what happens now. And right now, all I want is to make Sophia's life extremely miserable. I don't care if she feels like she's a changed woman and wants to right her wrongs. That's her fucking business, and it has nothing to do with me. She can go on with her repentance alone. I don't care. I will not let Sophia crawl back into my child's life or my life. I'm already talking to a lawyer, and we are getting prepared in case she decides to take legal action. I don't even want joint custody. In fact, I want a restraining order if possible. I know it's very hard to get one unless Sophia does something that will require it. I'm ready to go as far as framing her, but my lawyer has advised me not to take that route. I'm trying my best to make sure that the court grants me full custody again. Why did I say again? Well, when Sophia left 10 years ago, she sent me the divorce papers soon after. There was no fight for custody, and that's exactly what must happen now. I'll keep you guys updated on what happens in the next few months because right now I'm focused on talking to my lawyer and getting prepared for whatever Sophia thinks she can throw my way. Please, don't refrain from dropping your comments because I'll try to comment on all of them whenever I get the chance. Till next time, Reddit. Update 2. My dear Redditors, it's been 2 fucking years since I made this post. I am beyond elated to write an update after 2 years. I can't even believe that this post has been up here for 2 good years. Time really does fly, and I'm just beginning to understand that. This experience has been one fucking funny, annoying, and elevating ride, and I'm really grateful it happened. So, let's not waste any time. I saw your comments, and you all have been waiting for this update. So, if you're guessing that Sophia gave up and vanished like she did 10 years ago, you're wrong. Sophia did not take the easy route, and I'm thankful to have predicted her actions before it was too late. She stayed back in the city and made sure she tried to get on my nerves. I got another visit from Sophia 2 months later. She came to my house and asked to see her daughter. Yes, Redditors, Sophia had the nerves to come to my house again. I asked her to get out, obviously, but Sophia came prepared that day. She began to make a scene and tell me how stupid I was if I thought I could separate a mother from her own child. She accused me of trying to make Daniela hate her, and to be honest, I was glad she saw the truth. I'm happy she knows that I want my daughter to despise her. That said, Sophia caused a huge scene at my house. At first, I engaged in an exchange of words with her, which led me into cussing her out. But later, I just sat on the front porch and watched her continuously. Her rants eventually attracted the neighbors who got curious. Some of them who had stayed long enough recognized her as my ex-wife, while the new neighbors did not recognize her at all. The neighbors tried to calm her down, but she was not having it. She cried all over again and told them how I was stopping her from seeing her daughter. I've never really been one to care about public opinion, so it didn't really make a difference to me. I could see that some of the gullible neighbors and human rights activists were judging me with the way they looked at me. But the neighbors that stayed long enough and knew the full story were on my side. Some of the gossipers asked me to tell my side of the story, and I just found that very ridiculous. I didn't need to table the matter in front of anybody and get validation for what I knew was right. I refused because I was not going to give her an upper edge and let people meditate. I knew that there was nothing anybody was going to say that day that would make me change my mind. If I started explaining myself, I'd be telling them that I wanted them to judge a case that was not their business. Some of the neighbors I interacted with before tried to intervene and tell the other neighbors what really happened, but I did not try to input anything. After hours of unnecessary noise, I sent everyone out of my house. When I say everyone, I mean the neighbors and Sophia herself. Nobody was left out, not even my friends were left out. It's common knowledge that people who have never really been through a situation have the tendency to try judge that situation. Most times they just end up using their emotions and what they feel is justice. I did not need justice from anybody. I did not need anyone to give me justice. If you all are wondering where Daniela was that day, she was still with my mother. I enrolled her in another school there because I did not want her to come back till I was sure Sophia was out of the city. Daniela did not like the arrangement at all because changing schools is very hard for children, but I did not leave her with a choice. My mother convinced her with some ice cream, and that settled everything. Since I still had work, I'd go visit them every weekend, then return back to the city. Daniela would wail and cry anytime I got ready to leave. To be honest, I hated myself for spending days away from her, but I had to discipline myself. So, Daniela was not home to witness the scene Sophia caused that day. 4 months later, I started getting hints from some of the people I was close to in the city that Sophia had a new boyfriend who seemed to be rich enough. They also told me that there was a possibility of her getting a lawyer since she had a new rich boyfriend. I was relaxed before because I knew Sophia couldn't afford a lawyer bit. When I was told she had a new rich boyfriend, I knew that I had to take action fast. It was, and still is common knowledge to me that Sophia can be very convincing. She's a woman that has the ability to make you feel pity for her no matter what type of facts you have against her. That's why I did not waste time in hatching up my plan. Weeks later, I was able to get information on Sophia's new boyfriend from a friend. I got to know that he was a guy from a reputable family who came from old money. I'm sure my fellow Redditors know how significant old money is. It's the kind of wealth that has connections and stability. I knew that I had to do something fast, or else Sophia was going to get this new guy under her palms. I had more money than Sophia, but I did not have more money than her new boyfriend. There was every possibility that she was going to get him to get his family lawyer to defend her in court. Of course, guys from rich families have family lawyers who are usually very good at what they do. I was able to come up with a plan, and that plan was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. My plan was simple, but the execution was nowhere near simple. My dear Redditors, it's always hard for good people like me, LOL, to get vengeance. I was able to get Sophia's boyfriend's, well, his name is Darius, so let's just call him that now. I was able to get Darius' usual schedule from a friend of mine. I knew he worked at a bank and would go to a particular restaurant to cool off after work. I started going to the restaurant regularly and staying there for hours till he got there. I continued that routine for weeks before we finally spoke one day. Thankfully, he did not seem to recognize me. Maybe it helped that I introduced myself in a fake French accent with a very fake name. I started talking about finances, and he seemed to like the topics I brought up. Of course, a guy who works in a bank would want to hear about finance. It was a common logic I used, and thankfully, it worked. We became friends from that day on. 1 week later, I invited him to the restaurant to have lunch with me. That same day, I invited Sophia to the restaurant to have lunch with me. I told Darius that I recently got back with my old partner and that we'd been dating for months. He was excited and told me he wanted to meet her that same day. Sophia arrived at the restaurant before Darius did, and that's because I gave them 2 different times to come. When Sophia arrived, I told her I was ready to get back with her and that I missed her. I even went as far as telling her I broke up with Esther and was ready to let Daniela see her. She was shocked at first and tried playing hard to get, but after some time, she began to give in. We spent minutes talking, and to be honest, that had to be the most wasted minutes of my life. Thankfully, I was able to sight Darius coming from afar, and that was when I leaned in and kissed Sophia. Well, I did not really kiss her because I am disgusted by that woman. I just joined our foreheads together. Yes, my dear Redditors, I had to do what I had to do to get what I wanted. Darius was shocked to see Sophia and I in that position. I introduced her as the girl I've been telling him about, and he told me that Sophia was his girlfriend. I acted surprised and blah blah blah. Long story short, he got angry and left the restaurant. Sophia was so angry that she tried to slap me on the face, but I was able to twist her hands behind her and hold her in place. She got teary-eyed and told me she regretted the day she got married to me. I told her I was surprised it took her so long to regret it because honestly, I've been regretting it for years. She called me several names, some of which I cannot really remember, but the one I remember is betrayer. I was so happy she called me a betrayer because that just made me remind her how she betrayed her own child and how she betrayed me years ago. She stormed out of the restaurant after that and I went home. Do I feel bad about using Darius? No, I don't. He needs to thank me for saving him from a woman like Sophia. I heard he broke up with her that same day. How do I know? One of my friends is his colleague at the bank. He's the one that told me Darius was dating Sophia in the first place. Even after Sophia tried to tell him I was just her ex-husband, he did not want to get involved in the drama. He's from a reputable family, and we all know how they hate to get into shit. Sophia lost her rich boyfriend thanks to me, and I still enjoy that fact till this day. I'm happy that I was able to take something from her life. I'm happy that I gave her hope of us getting back together that day, then snatched it all from her. It's almost a replication of what she did to me many years ago. Of course, Sophia did not give up. She filed for joint custody in court, but the case watered down in the first few weeks. She was not stable enough, and she was absent for too long in my daughter's life. I thought she'd not give up, but maybe she ran out of money and decided not to go on with the case. Even though the custody fight ended and Sophia seemed to not show herself to me for months, I was not ready to have her show up again in the future. I wanted my daughter to have a stable life without a mother who appeared and disappeared anytime she had enough money to do so. After months of trying, I was able to get a job transfer out of town. I don't want to mention our new location for personal reasons, but I was able to get far away from our old town. My daughter is back to living with me, and we've spent months making up for the time we spent away from each other. Another important news, I got married to Esther. She's been a great mother to Daniela, and that's all I ever wanted. Our marriage has been great, and we're still learning to understand each other. That's what's been going on in my life, guys. Thanks for all your supportive comments and suggestions. I'm thankful to each and every one of you. Cheers.